powerful, engaging opening for a message on faith for divine healing must immediately lift the listener beyond natural limitations and into spiritual confidence. It should confront the tension between what is seen and what is believed, making it clear that divine healing is not dependent on visible evidence, but on unwavering trust in God's promise. The opening line should stir expectation, silence doubt, and awaken a sense of authority within the listener, reminding them that faith is not passive waiting, but active receiving. It should set the tone that no matter how strong the symptoms or how long the delay, faith stands firm, speaks life, and refuses to accept anything less than the reality of healing already made available. Faith begins where doubt ends. This statement carries a depth that goes far beyond a simple motivational idea. It is a spiritual principle that determines whether a person will step into victory or remain bound by uncertainty. Doubt is subtle. It doesn't always shout loudly. Sometimes it whispers quietly in the background of your thoughts, planting questions like, what if it doesn't work? Or what if this is not for me? And if those thoughts are entertained long enough, they begin to shape your expectations. Faith, on the other hand, does not negotiate with doubt. It does not sit down and try to reason with fear or analyze every possible negative outcome. Faith makes a decision. It chooses to believe in what has been promised, even when there is no physical evidence yet. This is the point where many struggle because the natural mind wants proof before it commits. But true faith operates in the opposite direction. It commits first, and then the evidence follows. You cannot walk in faith while holding on to doubt at the same time. The two cannot coexist in their fullness. One will always dominate the other. If you allow doubt to remain, even in small amounts, it will weaken your confidence and delay what you are believing for. That is why it becomes essential to guard your thoughts and be intentional about what you allow to take root in your mind. Every thought that contradicts truth must be challenged and replaced. Consider how powerful your inner dialogue is. What you repeatedly think about eventually becomes what you believe, and what you believe influences what you experience. If your mind is filled with uncertainty, fear, and negative expectations, then your faith will struggle to grow. But when you begin to intentionally focus on truth, repeating it, meditating on it, and declaring it, you are creating an environment where faith can flourish. There is also a moment of decision that every person must come to. It is the moment when you stop wavering between possibilities and make a firm choice to believe. This decision is not based on feelings, because feelings can change from one moment to the next. It is not based on circumstances, because circumstances are often unstable. It is based on something deeper, and inner conviction that refuses to be shaken. When doubt tries to rise, and it will, you must respond with firmness. You do not entertain it. You do not give it space to grow. Instead, you counter it with truth. This is not a one-time action, but a continuous process. Faith is strengthened over time as you consistently reject doubt and choose to stand on what you believe. It is important to understand that doubt often comes through what you see and feel. If your body feels weak, doubt will try to convince you that nothing has changed. If situations look unfavorable, doubt will attempt to paint a picture of defeat. But faith looks beyond what is visible. It sees something greater. It holds on to a reality that has not yet fully manifested, but is already established. There is a persistence required in this journey. You may not see immediate results, and that is where many people give up. They assume that if nothing has changed quickly, then it must not be working. But faith does not depend on immediate results to remain strong. It continues to stand even in the waiting. It continues to believe even in silence. As you continue to choose faith over doubt, something begins to shift within you. Your confidence grows stronger. Your mindset becomes more stable. You are no longer easily shaken by negative thoughts or external circumstances. Instead, you develop a quiet assurance, a steady belief that what you are trusting for is already in motion. Faith truly begins where doubt ends, but reaching that point requires intentional effort. It requires you to let go of every conflicting thought and fully commit to what you believe. It is not always easy, but it is always worth it. Because on the other side of doubt is a life filled with certainty, confidence, and the manifestation of what you have been believing for all along. The Word is the foundation upon which all true faith stands. Without a solid foundation, nothing can endure pressure, opposition, or time. In the same way, faith that is not rooted in the Word becomes unstable, easily shaken by circumstances, emotions, and the opinions of others. But when your faith is built on something unchanging, it develops a strength that cannot be moved. Many people attempt to base their belief on what they feel in the moment. If they feel strong, they think they are doing well. If they feel weak, they assume everything is falling apart. But feelings are not reliable. They shift constantly, influenced by situations, environment, and even physical conditions. If your faith depends on how you feel, it will rise and fall like a wave. The Word, however, does not change. It remains steady regardless of what is happening around you. This is why it becomes essential to give the Word first place in your thinking. It must become the final authority in your life. Not circumstances, not symptoms, not past experiences, only the Word. When you reach the point where you trust it more than what you see or feel, you begin to build a foundation that can support unwavering faith. Think about a structure built on weak ground. It may look strong at first, but when pressure comes, cracks begin to appear. Eventually, it cannot stand. The same principle applies to faith. If it is built on opinions, assumptions, or temporary emotions, it will not hold up when challenges arise. But when it is grounded in truth, it remains firm no matter what pressure comes against it. To make the Word your foundation, you must do more than simply hear it occasionally. It must become part of your daily life. You must spend time with it, think about it, and allow it to shape your perspective. As you do this, it begins to renew your mind. Old patterns of thinking, fear, doubt, negativity start to fade, and new patterns begin to take their place. There is also power in speaking the Word. When you declare it out loud, you are reinforcing it within yourself. You are aligning your thoughts and your words with truth. This is important because your words have a direct impact on your faith. If you constantly speak what contradicts the Word, you weaken your own foundation. But when you speak in agreement with it, you strengthen your belief and create consistency between what you say and what you trust. Another key aspect of building on the Word is consistency. It is not something you turn to only in moments of need. It must become your constant source. When everything is going well, you continue to stand on it. When challenges arise, you do not shift away from it. This consistency is what produces stability. It keeps you grounded even when everything else feels uncertain. There will be times when external voices try to pull you away from this foundation. People may offer opinions that contradict what you believe. Situations may present evidence that seems to oppose it. But this is where your commitment is tested. Will you remain anchored, or will you allow yourself to be moved? When you are truly established on the Word, you develop a kind of inner confidence that does not depend on external validation. You are not easily swayed by what others say or by what circumstances suggest. Instead, you hold firm, knowing that your foundation is secure. Over time, this foundation begins to influence every area of your life. Your thinking becomes clearer. Your reactions become more controlled. Your faith becomes stronger and more consistent. You are no longer tossed back and forth by uncertainty because you have something solid beneath you. Building on the Word is not a one-time event, it is a continuous process. It requires dedication, focus, and a willingness to prioritize it above everything else. But the result is worth it, a life that is stable, grounded, and unshaken by the challenges that come your way. What you say matters more than many people realize. Words are not empty sounds. They carry direction, influence, and creative power. They shape your thinking, reinforce your beliefs, and ultimately affect the outcomes you experience. This is why it becomes so important to speak life instead of sickness, especially when facing challenges in your body or circumstances. It is easy to fall into the habit of speaking what you feel. When pain is present, the natural response is to talk about it. When weakness shows up, the instinct is to describe it in detail. But every time you speak in agreement with those negative conditions, you are strengthening their presence in your mind. You are giving them more attention, more focus, and more influence over your expectation. Speaking life requires a deliberate choice. It is not about denying what you feel, but about refusing to let it define what you believe. There is a difference between acknowledging a situation and agreeing with it. When you constantly declare how bad things are, you move from acknowledgement into agreement. And agreement gives those conditions a stronger hold on your mindset. Your words act like seeds. Every statement you make is planted somewhere within you. Over time, those seeds grow and produce results. If you continually plant words of fear, doubt, and sickness, you should not be surprised when your outlook becomes negative and your faith weakens. But if you begin to plant words of life, strength, and restoration, something different begins to take root. This process does not happen instantly. At first, it may even feel unnatural to speak positively when everything around you seems to contradict it. But consistency is the key. The more you choose to speak life, the more it begins to align with your thinking. Eventually, it becomes a natural response rather than a forced effort. There is also a connection between your words and your expectation. What you say repeatedly becomes what you anticipate. If your words are filled with defeat, you will begin to expect negative outcomes. But when your words are filled with life and confidence, your expectation shifts. You begin to look for improvement, for change, for restoration. This is especially important during difficult moments. When symptoms intensify or circumstances seem to worsen, the pressure to speak negatively increases. But these are the moments that matter most. This is where your words either reinforce your faith or weaken it. Choosing to speak life in those moments requires discipline, but it also releases strength into your spirit. Another important aspect is that your words influence not only you, but also those around you. When others hear you speak, they pick up on your perspective. If you consistently speak negatively, it can create an atmosphere of discouragement. But when you speak life, you create an atmosphere of hope and confidence, not just for yourself, but for everyone listening. It is also important to guard against careless speech. Sometimes negative words slip out without much thought simply because they have become habitual. Phrases that express defeat or limitation can become so common that they go unnoticed. But even these casual words have an effect. Becoming aware of what you say is the first step toward changing it. Replacing negative speech with life-giving words does not mean repeating empty phrases without meaning. It requires sincerity and belief. As you continue to speak life, take time to reflect on what you are saying. Let those words sink into your thinking. Allow them to shape your perspective from the inside out. Over time, you will begin to notice a shift. Your mindset becomes more positive, your confidence increases, and your faith grows stronger. Situations that once caused you to speak negatively no longer have the same effect. Instead, your default response becomes one of life, strength, and expectation. Speaking life is not just a technique, it is a way of living. It is a consistent choice to align your words with what you believe rather than what you feel. And as you continue in this practice, those words begin to produce exactly what they were designed to bring: life, strength, and transformation. Believing before you see goes against natural instinct. Most people are conditioned to rely on their senses to trust what they can touch, measure, and observe. If something is visible, it feels real. If it cannot be seen, it is often dismissed or doubted. But faith operates on an entirely different level. It requires you to accept something as true long before it becomes visible in your circumstances. This is where the real challenge begins. It is not difficult to believe once everything has already changed. Anyone can have confidence when the evidence is clear and undeniable. But believing before you see requires inner conviction. It demands that you trust in what has been promised, even when there is no outward confirmation. There is a tendency to wait for a sign, something that proves things are improving. People often think, once I see a little progress, then I will fully believe. But that approach reverses the process. Faith does not grow out of what you see. What you see grows out of your faith. The visible result is not the starting point, it is the outcome. This means you must learn to separate your belief from your current situation. What is happening around you may not reflect what you are trusting for. In fact, there may be moments when everything appears unchanged or even worse. But those moments are not indicators of failure. They are opportunities to strengthen your belief. Your imagination plays an important role in this process. What you consistently picture in your mind begins to shape your inner reality. If you constantly imagine negative outcomes, it becomes harder to believe for anything different. But when you begin to picture yourself whole, restored, and strong, you create a mental image that supports your faith. This inner picture becomes something you can hold on to, even when outward conditions have not yet aligned. It is also important to understand that believing is a choice. It is not something that simply happens to you. You decide what you will accept as true. You decide what you will focus on. When doubts arise, and they will, you have the ability to either entertain them or reject them. Choosing to believe does not mean doubts never appear. It means you refuse to give them authority. There is a persistence required in believing before you see. It is not a one-time decision, but a continuous stance. Each day you reaffirm what you believe. Each time doubt tries to enter, you respond with conviction. This ongoing process strengthens your faith and makes it more stable. Another challenge people face is the pressure of time. When results are not immediate, it is easy to become discouraged. Thoughts like, "Why hasn't anything changed yet?" begin to surface. But faith is not dependent on timing. It does not weaken simply because something takes longer than expected. True belief remains steady regardless of how much time passes. You must also learn to detach your emotions from your belief. Feelings can be powerful, but they are not always accurate indicators of reality. There may be days when you feel confident and strong, and other days when you feel uncertain. If your belief is tied to those feelings, it will fluctuate constantly. But when your belief is rooted deeper than your emotions, it remains consistent. Believing before you see also requires trust that what you are holding on to is reliable and true. Without that trust, it becomes difficult to maintain confidence in the unseen. But when that trust is established, it creates a sense of peace. You are no longer striving or struggling. You are simply standing in what you already believe to be true. Over time, something begins to shift. The unseen reality you have been holding on to starts to move closer into view. What was once only internal begins to show externally. But by the time it becomes visible, your belief is no longer dependent on it. You have already settled it within yourself. This is the essence of believing before you see. It is a steady, unwavering confidence in something not yet visible, combined with a refusal to be moved by what appears otherwise. It is not always easy, but it is powerful. Because when you learn to believe this way, you are no longer controlled by circumstances who are shaping them. Healing is not something distant, uncertain, or reserved for a select few. It is already provided. This truth shifts everything because it changes the way you approach faith. Instead of striving to obtain something that may or may not happen, you begin to understand that it has already been made available. The focus is no longer on trying to convince yourself that healing might come someday, but on learning how to receive what has already been given. Many people live in a constant state of hoping. They say things like, "I hope things get better," or "maybe one day I'll experience change." While hope has its place, it is not the same as faith. Hope looks forward, always pointing to the future. Faith, however, takes hold of something now. It treats what is unseen as already real and present. When you understand that healing is already provided, your mindset begins to shift from uncertainty to confidence. One of the greatest obstacles in this area is the belief that healing must be earned. Some feel they need to do enough, be good enough, or reach a certain level before they can qualify. But this way of thinking creates distance. It places healing on the other side of effort and performance rather than recognizing it as something freely available. When you see it as already provided, you stop striving and start receiving. Receiving requires a different posture. It is not about effort or struggle, it is about acceptance. Imagine someone offering you a gift. You do not work for it, you simply take it. But if you question whether the gift is really yours, or if you hesitate to accept it, you may never fully receive it. In the same way, if you constantly question whether healing belongs to you, it becomes difficult to embrace it with confidence. Another challenge people face is focusing too much on their current condition. When symptoms are strong or persistent, it is easy to let them define reality. But if healing is already provided, then your present condition is not the final truth. It is only a temporary situation. What has been provided carries greater authority than what is currently being experienced. This is where perspective becomes crucial. You must learn to see beyond what is happening right now and align your thinking with what is already established. This does not mean ignoring your situation, but it means refusing to let it have the final say. Your focus shifts from the problem to the provision, from the condition to the solution. Gratitude can play a powerful role in this process. When you begin to thank for something as if it is already yours, it changes your attitude. Gratitude reinforces belief. It moves your thinking away from lack and toward abundance. Instead of constantly asking or pleading, you begin to appreciate and acknowledge what has already been made available. There is also a level of confidence that comes from understanding provision. You no longer feel uncertain or hesitant. You are not wondering if something will happen. You are standing on what has already been done. This confidence strengthens your faith and helps you remain steady even when circumstances try to suggest otherwise. It is important to remain consistent in this understanding. There may be moments when doubt tries to creep in, especially when results are not immediate. Thoughts may arise questioning whether it is really true or whether it applies to you. But this is where you must hold your ground. You return to the truth and reaffirm it, refusing to let uncertainty take root. Over time, this mindset begins to transform the way you think and respond. You are no longer chasing something that feels out of reach. Instead, you are walking in the awareness that it is already within reach. This brings a sense of peace and assurance, replacing anxiety and striving. Healing being already provided is not just an idea, it is a reality that must be embraced. And once it is embraced, everything changes. Your faith becomes more stable, your confidence grows, and your perspective shifts. You begin to live not as someone trying to obtain something, but as someone who is learning to fully receive what has already been given all along. There is a kind of strength that does not shake even when circumstances try to overwhelm it. It is the strength of standing firm in faith, no matter what is happening around you. This is not a passive position, it is an active, determined stance that says, I will not be moved. Standing firm is one of the most important expressions of true faith, especially when everything visible seems to contradict what you believe. Life often presents pressure. Situations do not always change quickly, and challenges can persist longer than expected. In those moments, the temptation is to shift, to compromise, or to let go of what you once believed. But standing firm means refusing to change your position just because the environment is uncomfortable. It means your conviction is stronger than your circumstance. This firmness is not based on stubbornness or denial. It is based on assurance. When you are convinced that what you are standing on is true, you do not need external validation to maintain your position. You remain steady because your confidence is anchored in something deeper than what you can currently see. There will always be voices that try to shake your stand. Some come from outside opinions of others, negative reports, or discouraging advice. Others come from within thoughts of doubt, fear, and impatience. Both can be equally powerful if not addressed. That is why standing firm requires discipline. You must learn to filter what you hear, what you think, and what you accept. One of the greatest challenges in standing firm is time. When answers are delayed, pressure increases. People begin to question whether their position is correct. But delay is not denial. The absence of immediate change does not mean nothing is happening. In fact, some of the most important developments occur during periods of waiting, even if they are not visible yet. Standing firm also requires emotional stability. Feelings can fluctuate, sometimes strongly. There may be days of confidence and days of uncertainty. If your stand depends on how you feel, it will be inconsistent. But when your stand is based on conviction, it remains steady regardless of emotional changes. You learn to separate feelings from truth, allowing truth to guide you rather than emotions. Another key aspect is persistence. Standing firm is not a one-time decision, it is a continuous choice. Each day, each moment, you reaffirm your position. You do not allow setbacks to redefine your belief. Even when things seem unchanged, you continue to hold your ground. This persistence builds resilience over time. It is also important to guard your environment. What you consistently expose yourself to can either strengthen or weaken your stand. Negative influences can slowly erode confidence if not addressed. That is why it becomes necessary to be intentional about what you listen to, what you watch, and who you allow to influence your thinking. Surrounding yourself with what reinforces truth helps you remain strong. Standing firm does not mean you ignore reality. It means you refuse to let current reality be the final authority. You acknowledge what is happening, but you do not surrender your belief to it. There is a difference between awareness and agreement. Awareness simply recognizes a situation. Agreement accepts it as unchangeable. Faith refuses to agree with anything that contradicts what is believed to be true. Over time, something powerful happens when you consistently stand firm. Your confidence deepens. What once felt like effort begins to feel natural. You become less easily shaken by external circumstances. Your mindset becomes steady, your responses become calm, and your faith becomes more consistent. Eventually, you reach a place where standing firm is no longer a struggle, but a way of life. You are no longer constantly reacting to every change around you. Instead, you are anchored, and that anchoring gives you peace, strength, and endurance. Standing firm in faith is not always easy, but it is always powerful. Because when you refuse to be moved by what you see, feel, or hear, you position yourself to see transformation unfold in ways that only become clear when you have already chosen not to give up.